All right. You know I'm here because I heard something got me got me a little bit on the bothered side. Let's just do this.
And then it gets to Earth, and it's just like pulls its face off like it was me all along.
One swell food to do that were detected to find only the kind of neutrinos that the sun made, not the kind of neutrinos that ended up landing and arriving here on Earth. It'd be as though I tossed you a basketball,
Right.
and you received a football.
Look at that.
But you set up detectors only for.
You realize neutrino detectors on different elevations interact more at the lower depths than at the higher depths because of density. So when you're down at sea level, you're going to detect more. And the reason why you detect more at sea level is because there's more stuff for you to interact with. All the neutrinos that have gone through the atmosphere and everything, like, it's the same density of neutrinos. The difference is the amount of stuff it can finally react with. It's not that
basketballs.
Right.
Okay, so now watch. Wait. So that meant that it's called neutrino. There's a term for it in physics, but basically it decays into another species. Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay. Wait a minute. If it knows to do that after a certain amount of time, then it can't be traveling at the speed of light. Because if it was at the speed of light, it would have no concept of time and would not know when to change species.
Okay, let me just tell you, like, a bunch of different facts about light. First of all, light has been slowed down to the speed of a car in a certain fluid that goes at a certain temperature and stuff. Light can be manipulated by atmospheres, so they change over time. They're adjusting as they're traveling. That's what we call redshift. So why wouldn't you expect neutrinos to also have some regular kind of adjustment as they get here to Earth? If they're going through stuff like the cosmic microwave background radiation and other stuff like that. It's because you're not using your head right now.
Exactly. It could not know because traveling at the speed of light means that it can only exist as it is while it's traveling at the speed of light.
Correct. Because there's no time clock to tell it
There's
to
no
do
time to
anything
tell
else.
it what to do.
Correct.
Yeah. It's
So
like,
The false assumption is there's a bunch of things that it hurts to hear this kind of stuff, but there were other stuff that hurts, but this is the thing that was like, it triggered me, because, and this is why I have to make this reaction video, this is why I have to tell you. First of all, neutrinos, right? The type of neutrinos we interact with on Earth and stuff. The way that we find them, okay? The way it works, we have a pool, we have a substance, the neutrinos pass through it and interact and bump against this substance. And therefore, they're possibly going faster than the speed of light. Or near the speed of light. They're going at a speed that's insane. I'll be right back.
In one
So
swell foop, we learned that
if the light from a source can redshift over time, why wouldn't you expect neutrinos to also change? But here's the thing, it doesn't make any difference. We're noticing neutrinos, right, at whatever speed they're going, but we've also had other things go faster than the normal c, the speed of light, as is depicted by like 299 million meters per second, right? That kind of thing.
we're looking for the wrong neutrino, and the neutrino does not travel at the speed of light. It travels very close,
but not the same.
but not the same.
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
Yes, this is science, dude. This is
So it's interesting to know that objects that are almost a photon, not exactly, and they're capable of traveling faster, but then you get this God particle that comes in and clocks at like a speed we don't even understand how it was able, not the oh my God particle is another thing that's like it was clocked going at some crazy speed for a mass of its size. And that's something that's like way bigger than no neutrino. And yeah, it's nuts.
crazy, fun, interesting
It
phenomenon.
really is.
Yeah.
I just love that the neutrino is like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible.
Oh.
It leaves the sun and then gets to Earth and it's just like pulls its face off like it was me all along.
Anyway, we go back to that, and that's how it makes sense. I wanted to explain that part, or let you have some continuity of it. But I'm not going to show you like the whole friggin' like talk. Like it's a 40-minute talk, but like this part. Okay, there's other things. There's other things. For example, they talk about how I don't know when they do it because there's no way to know. I didn't keep track. I didn't make notes. I'm sorry. I'm lazy. But here's the thing, right? You got this thing about how satellites, well, their speed is making time slow down and gravity makes it speed up. Something about that, right? Now you have to understand that as you're going at extreme speeds, the forces you're going to experience are really strong, and they're going to pull you in a certain direction, opposite of your travel, as obvious. And thing about it is that the satellites have, like, they're going a great speed, right? You're going to experience some kind of weird shenanigans happening to the atomic particles of stuff. Like, it's not going to be stable enough. And what's happening with the light itself is that light is taking certain time to travel a certain distance. If you're going at a certain speed, especially if you're going in an orbit, which we're going in a circle, light isn't just traveling in a straight line anymore. It's traveling also from where it started to where it is ending up. And anytime that you change your velocity in this process, it changes the distance that light is having to travel by a tiny fraction. This fraction is noticeable and is called time dilation by idiots. It's not time dilation. If you literally do the calculations, or if you literally just do an analysis of the trajectory of the light path from the emitter to the particle to the sensor, because that's how atomic clocks work. You shine a beam at the beryllium. It's really precise. It works great in an atmosphere. It works great when it's not moving at crazy speeds, going at up and down in a circular situation, and also changing velocities. Like literally, anytime that you change velocity out in space, you are and you're using light as your timekeeper. What you're doing is, unfortunately, you are changing the rhythm and the amount of the light traveling. Like if you change it so that a light look, a light beam sent at 300,000 nanoseconds and arrives at the particle at 300,001 nanoseconds, right? And it comes back I don't know. I don't know why I said nanoseconds and all that stuff. Yeah, at a regular speed, right? Let's say that it moves at whatever rate every nanosecond. Okay, just pretend we're working with stable numbers here. If a beam of light is moving at 1 nanosecond per whatever distance, right? Which it does at some distance. I don't know what that distance is, but let's just say it is. Now pretend that you are going an extra longer distance over that course of time. It'll take a certain amount of time to get there. And if you slow down, that light that went from the emitter is going to take an extra amount of time to get back to the detector as it bounces off, as well as the atomic shift from just bouncing off the beryllium particles. The light beam could actually have bounced deeper into the beryllium and then back again. It's not accurate, as like they try to say that it is. It's not perfect, but you would have to go on the order of quintillions, right? Femtoseconds to notice this type of stuff, which is way more than nanoseconds. Way tinier amount of time. Fragment of time is like the if you want to think of like just how many zeros there are in there. Nanoseconds are ordered of only like a million or a billion, and that's like, 10 to, what is it? Forgive me for not knowing this off by heart, but like it's 10 to the 6th or 10 to the 9th, and then you're going all the way to 10 to the 15th. This is important for you to understand. So when I'm having this situation happen here, the thing that comes in my mind, all right, if you're going at a crazy speed and at an angle, right, because you're always in a circle, you're going always at an angle, slightly. Like I say, that tiny amount of distance and a tiny amount of change in distance because of this change in your velocity is enough that, like I say, a light beam that started here, bounced here, came back here for that fraction of time, if you're going like 10,000 versus 10,001 meters per second, something, whatever your satellite's doing, let's say it's doing that, the difference between the 10,000 and the 10,001 for that light is something. is a microscopic amount of its total speed distance difference. So it's like if you go to the femtosecond, it may be only a couple femtoseconds change. But again, that's not time dilation. That's just you changed where your target is by a tiny distance. Relate this to something in a big scale. Okay, let's say that I have a bullet. Or let's say I have a ball. Let's just have a ball. Everyone has a ball, right? You got one of those super balls at home. What happens if you throw a ball at a certain speed so it hits the ground and it's enough to bounce it back up? But then you change where your hand is so it's lower or higher up. Are you going to be, and you, if you threw it at the exact inertia to make it so it will go and you'll catch it, but any faster, right? You might want to catch it higher up, or you could catch it higher up if you had your hand higher up. And if you went slower, you would not be able to reach it. It would not, or it wouldn't be able to travel enough to reach you. And we all know this. We all get that. Now imagine light is the same way. And the way that these distances are made are when light, and light doesn't act like a super ball. Don't say that that's how, although it is bouncing off something. So we can say it is like a super ball, but you're moving your hand so that the detector cannot, right? It would get there no matter what, but the point is when it would get there, right? You know it would be different getting up to this point versus getting down to this point. And there's the difference. Going through space, you're going to change. When you're going through an orbit, if you're doing it, you're constantly changing your speed because you are slowly going back towards the planet. And then you do a burn, and then you go back up, and you go down slowly, and then you go back up. Right? This is the sine wave of what you're doing relative to like a regular stationary orbit. And if something were geosynchronous, well, your satellites aren't at geosynchronous. They're going up and down, depending on where they are in the orbit. And they have to burn in order to keep up. So what's happening to your atomic clocks with this scenario is you're constantly changing the amount of time and constantly changing very small amounts where that light is headed. You would say the geometry looks like it's headed in this same space, but it's actually not this space, it's that space. Could you tell how much I move my fingers? No. It's that little bit. But you're changing that little bit, and that changes how fast the clock ticks. Over the course of a day, over the course of a month, that is noticeable. And then it becomes a problem. And it's enough that it can make certain things like your entire GPS clock system and when it's supposed to do these adjustments so that it doesn't know when to do it unless we tell it what time it needs to do it at. Now, if you were to properly calculate for the trajectories of the light path and the changing of which happens on the fly as you are changing your velocity mid-flight, right? If you were able to do that, you would be able to tell there is no such thing as time dilation. But it's unfortunate people aren't at that level yet. They're not here yet. They don't get it. They don't know. So they still think that there is time dilation out there because the clocks are reacting weirdly. And I'm saying it's a geometry thing, and you're messing it up. You're not understanding. You don't grasp it. You don't even try to grasp it. You just say time dilation, wave it away, and then keep on readjusting your clocks all the time instead of knowing how to correct. Because that tick ain't a tick of a second. It's 1/1000th of a second with a very specific number I do not know. Bouncing off that beryllium is a very specific harmonic and a specific number, and we can tell that. And we're working with like billionths of time per second with an object going as fast as the speed of light, and we're expecting it to be the most accurate possible, but in the tiny fragments of how we change velocity, that changes the distance of the light traveling compared to the time it went out and the time it comes back. We have moved a different position. And to a degree, that happens at any velocity. We saw there was an experiment done where two planes went around the Earth. One went with the rotation of the Earth, and the other went against the rotation of the Earth. Right? One went counterclockwise as the Earth goes clockwise, and the other one went counterclockwise as opposite of the Earth. And what happened was, and there was another clock. So you have one clock in the one plane, one clock in the other plane, one clock on the ground. All those clocks were synchronized to be correctly the same and everything else, but then you take them on this trip and all the clocks were different, except for, of course, the one on the ground didn't change at all. But the one going with the Earth rotation had a change in its momentum and total velocity and everything, that it changed how many nanoseconds had passed by just that much, and the other one changed in the opposite direction. So I'm not going to say which one went forward and which one went back because I don't remember, but the point is it happened. It would be better if I knew those informations, but it's like this proves that velocity in one direction changes things versus velocity in another direction makes it the opposite direction. So it's interesting, like this is sort of like when you think of Superman flying around the Earth like a bunch of times, right? If you're able to make the clock tick backwards every time you go backward in this orbit around the Earth relative to its orbit and spin, the rotation, the way the Earth rotates, right? It makes sense that if he was able to do that fast enough, that he would be able to turn the clock backwards and actually go backwards in time and stuff like that nonsense. That's what that's based off. But the problem is, it's only your clock being weird, right? Because the clock, what was happening with the clock that went, what I imagine was happening with the clock that went with the rotation of the Earth, okay? So the Earth is going this way, the clock is going this way on that plane. That is a certain amount of distance, right? And a certain amount of speed. Now they say that they went at the same speed, but what's happening is the speed of the Earth would either contribute to the speed of the plane as you're going in the same direction, and negate from the plane as you're going the opposite direction. Or the other way around. I don't remember. When you're going the same direction as the planet, the way that that works is that you end up needing to travel a certain amount of distance as the Earth is also moving that distance. The time it'll take you to do that travel, right? It's like you're trying to move, it's like you're trying to go from the back of the train to the front of the train as the train is leaving you, as you're going alongside on the outside of the train, like on a horse or something, right? The opposite direction is like you moving from the front of the train to the back of the train on a horse. It's not going to take as long because the train is moving towards your motion, right? And you could be going at the same rate, but the first guy, he took so much longer to get to the end of the train, and the other one going the opposite direction took a lot less. Because relative to each other, relative to where they were traveling in the planet, the train is going this way, you're traveling that way, right? In the amount of time that the train goes this way, you could go that way in a slow amount of time, and it takes you no time at all. And the train speed and your speed add up. It's the exact opposite of the idea of you being on the train, okay? Just imagine it. If you're going alongside someone who's running, right? If they're going a little bit faster, you're never going to catch up with them. If you go and you catch up to somebody going faster, but they have a head start, it'll take you some time to catch up to them, right? But if you're going towards each other, then it doesn't matter how far the distance is, your total speeds add together. The amount of time until you two join up is like, boom, done. Right? A 100-meter dash, if you're both going at like 30, then it'll take you, what is it? 10 seconds or so? But if you're going towards each other, you'll meet each other at the 5-second mark. Right? And this is the type of thing that people don't think about when it comes to time dilation and how it works. Is that the relative motion of you and another object compared to the backdrop, which is not moving, is important. So the planet, it's always moving. But then you have your satellites, and they're moving at a certain speed in a certain direction, and then you have the light beam inside of the satellite trying to go in a certain position, trying to get there, and the slower, the faster you go, light will still end up taking a certain amount of time. It's not about the speed that the light is traveling. It's the fact that the light itself takes longer to get there. We've seen these trajectory lines as like, oh, it goes up and down. It still takes this amount of time to get there, but if it goes long bounce, it's going to take longer to get there. Anyone knows that. Once you go in at like pretty much this angle, you're not going that far to get to where you are. Once you go in this angle, it's much longer, right? Like a 45-degree angle versus near straight, like 1 or 2 degrees. The distance between the flat edge and the point will be different. And you can calculate that. There are ways to calculate that. And if you compensate for that, if you understand that, then you understand what's going on with light inside of the satellite dish, and you can be able to tell how far it's actually moving. But we're talking again about microscopic distances and really rapid instances in time, like femtoseconds, 10 to the 15th power of a second, right? Or a million billion of a second, right? Quintillionth of a second. And we're talking about moments that are so small and such tiny distances that even the changing of the velocity of the ship changes the distance light has to travel, right? All that taken into effect, I guarantee you're going to forget about the idea of time dilation altogether, which is unfortunate because time dilation means we could possibly travel through time at some point. We can't. Not with that method. Not with increasing our gravity or increasing our speed. We will not travel through time any different, which also means particles going at near the speed of light or whatever are also not experiencing time any differently than anyone else. So it's ridiculous to say that, like, with the speed of light considered, it takes billions or quadrillions of light years before you end up with redshift. But light does eventually spread out, changing its phase as it goes along. The only time I've seen light spread out is when it goes through one of them prisms, making rainbow stuff. But that's a really tiny prism and a very small amount of stuff making light do that in a very short amount of its travel time. So what if the atmosphere out in space is actually an atmosphere out in space? What if that atmosphere is actually also doing something to the light as it travels? Now, people say the redshift is because the space itself is spreading out. I don't think you understand how physics works, but the space is not spreading out. The stuff in space is attenuating. It is spreading out. But space is not expanding. That's a hoax. Misunderstanding and misinformation. And it's the same as time goes on, that we think of orbits as perfect circles. They also mentioned the orbits are not perfect circles. They're like an egg shape and all that, and the elliptical and whatever. And so we learn and we adapt and we become more knowledgeable as we go on. Now, the problem is, I've been talking about this for 10 years. Previous channel no longer exists, defunct, dead, and gone, murdered by people who don't know what the hell they're talking about. I don't know why they killed my channel. It doesn't matter. The point is, I've been talking about this for 10 years. People are talking about this yesterday or 6 months ago. The understanding is up to date with these videos. And it's not just him talking about it. It's literally NASA. It's literally everyone else who also believes this silly stuff about time dilation. And the problem is, they don't get real physics if they think time dilation is a thing. Because I swear to God, you compensate for the distance that light travels and the difference of it as it goes through stuff. As you change your velocity and all that, you're going to change how you think about light traveling for a satellite. You're going to make more accurate systems that are no longer based off of time dilation and based on real science. And you'll actually know how to count time in a changing velocity reference frame. And how light does not like to work light doesn't like to work steadily in a changing velocity reference frame. It doesn't want to do it. It's like, oh, my emitter started here. I'm supposed to go back to that emitter, but apparently I'm actually also having it travel along with me. And the particle it's going to bounce off is also traveling. If it slows down, then as it bounced off of the one thing, the particle, and it comes back, well, now it has a fraction of a distance to actually keep on. And that's why your clocks are messed up. You don't understand how you're changing your target. But they don't get it. They've been like this for decades. And I've only been in here for a while. And the problem is, like, I used to have a bigger following, and then people would be able to notice this stuff and be able to tell people about it, and nobody gets it. And what I want is for someone to be in there and be like, well, a proper analysis of this and that will make it so you have a better understanding of this and that. And a proper analysis of the double slit experiment will actually give you the full information of what's happening in the double slit experiment. Because they get that wrong also. I've already talked about that in other videos, so many. But this is the idea that objects move, that light doesn't have time affected as it's traveling. It's going to be the same light as it was when it was emitted is just ridiculous. Because anytime it goes through any atmosphere, anytime it's affected by anything, it will be affected by something. It will change. Right? That's why we have light bouncing off of other galaxies, showing images of other galaxies in all sorts of different spaces. And it's like, no, this is not 4 different galaxies. This is the same galaxy. The light is being changed of how its motion is as it's passing by this one galaxy because of the atmosphere of the galaxy. That's insane. right? Galaxies, they emit so much light that it's easy to create all sorts of spread out images of them. So we see like 4 of them or something, as you see in these pictures. And it's like, wait, so we know that there's stuff that can affect light, and yet we're saying that light isn't affected because as you move at light speed, time no longer affects things. But it's like your trajectory can change, your frequency can change. These things happen when there are objects in your way. So why would you say something so dumb? But this isn't just what they're thinking. It's not just Neil having these ideas. It's everyone coming to these conclusions. I'm like the only sane person here. That's sad. But it's like they could have the same perspective. They could get on the train. They could have that same epiphany eventually, but they've been stuck and thinking, although they have been trying to learn. I'm not going to say that they never tried to learn, or that they're so stuck in their perspective, but it's like once you feel like you have a grasp of reality, like women, you just don't. You don't have a grasp of what's going on. You got to keep on searching, keep on finding out what's going on. Until that day when we finally do have the knowledge of all things, such as microgravity, gravity on the atomic level, which is like, come on, you can't tell me you don't understand how gravity works on the atomic level. It works the same as gravity on the large scale. Big objects moving stuff around. Now you want to understand how the universe started. It started off big. It was still an object. Objects with momentum tend to interact with each other, bumping against each other, and the bumps make collisions that end up making spins, the spins forcing other stuff into their path. Some stuff moves faster, some stuff moves slower. You end up with certain size disks that are spinning. These collapse into planets and stars, galaxies, solar systems. All the tiny little fragments turn into the asteroid belts. It's obvious stuff, but we're saying we don't understand how it happened, and it's like, no, this is obvious to me. How orbits have a regenerative force, and it makes sense then that when you see something and its motion of its moons, like Jupiter's moons, they all are on this beating pattern where it's like boom, 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 stuff like that. It's on this pattern because as an object moves around and near the other object, its own gravity affects the other moon, so it speeds up, slows down, speeds up, slows down until it's regulated. And it's been going on for so long, it's had time to regulate. So if you want to find something in chaos, you gotta find something early that hasn't had that chance to regulate and become stable. But of course it makes sense that it would stabilize over time, because gravity wants to pull not just as you're moving towards it, but as you're moving away from it. So there's a little bit of a kick and a little bit of a drag back, and eventually it all just settles. You know. Anyway, the idea of this video live stream was to talk about how light is affected by causality. Light does change. And we talk about neutrinos and how they are supposedly not going the speed of light, or they're going like 99.9% the speed of light, whatever, and stuff like that. Okay, whatever. The point is, light is also affected by causality. It's also changed. It also has different frequencies as it travels. It changes and spreads out and becomes dimmer as it goes on, and all of these things. Which makes sense that if you're looking at stuff dim in the further and further distances, the dimmer the light, the further away it must be, because unless it is a dim light source. Some of the stars and galaxies that we think are far away, we can analyze whether or not they are actually of a dim light source or if they're of a bright light source. And then we can tell how far away they are by looking at the image. And we're like, wow, we can find stuff that's like billions of light years away. It's that dim. And it's that tiny. Right? These whole galaxies that are extremely far away, these whole stars that are like, we can notice where they are, how big they are, where something is behind that, and all that. But anyhow, that's all for this video. If you actually learned something from that, the thing you should take away from it is that light in the satellites, the atomic clocks, it's moving at different velocities. The clock, the satellite itself, moving at different velocities changes the distance the light is traveling, changes the tick in the clock enough that it makes it be inaccurate. There is no time dilation. Get that out of your head. Grow up. Analyze it properly. Thank you. Toodles! Check out the Simon's Me playlist where all this is talked about.